Once in a grand kingdom, there was a cunning tailor who was known not for his skill, but for his deceit. One day he heard that the king of the land loved fine clothing and extravagant garments. An idea formed in his mind. If I can impress the king, I will live in luxury forever, he thought. So he went to the palace and requested an audience with the king. When he stood before the throne, he bowed deeply and said, "Your Majesty, I have mastered a craft that no other tailor possesses. I can weave a fabric so fine, so exquisite, that only the wise and noble can see it. Fools, however, will see nothing at all." The king, curious and proud, was enchanted by the idea. A robe that only the wise can see? What a magnificent test of intelligence, he thought. Eager to prove his wisdom, the king ordered the tailor to make him a garment from this extraordinary fabric. The tailor pretended to work for days. He moved his hands skillfully, measuring, cutting, and sewing. Yet there was nothing in his hands. Every time the king sent a servant to check on the progress, the tailor would lift his imaginary fabric and exclaim, "Look at this fine texture. Feel how light and soft it is." The servants, afraid to be called fools, nodded in admiration. "Indeed, it is unlike anything we have ever seen," they said, though they saw nothing at all. Word spread through the palace. The king's new robe was a masterpiece of magic and wisdom. Finally, the tailor brought the invisible robe to the king. He lifted his hands and draped nothing over the king's shoulders. "Behold, your Majesty, the finest robe ever made." The king looked down but saw nothing. His heart pounded. "Am I a fool? Is that why I cannot see it?" he wondered. Unwilling to expose himself as unwise, he smiled and nodded. "Truly, it is magnificent," he declared. The courtiers, afraid to be seen as fools, praised the robe as well. "Such beauty! Such craftsmanship!" they cried, though none of them saw anything. The trick had worked. The tailor's plan had succeeded, and he was rewarded with gold and a grand position at court. But one day, a simple servant boy, who had heard of the magical robe, saw the king and blurted out, "But the king is wearing nothing." The room fell silent. The courtiers gasped, looking at one another in shock. The king's face flushed. The illusion was shattered. The tailor, realizing his deception was exposed, tried to flee, but the guards seized him immediately. The king, now humiliated and furious, ordered, "This man claimed he could weave the finest robe. Then surely he must be a fine horseman too. Let him ride my fiercest stallion." But the tailor, trembling, stammered, "Your Majesty, I am a tailor, not a rider." The king smirked. "Nonsense. If you could weave an invisible robe, surely you can ride an invisible horse." Then instead of a noble stallion, the guards brought forth a wild ox. Before the tailor could protest, they threw him onto its back. The ox charged wildly through the palace courtyard, throwing the tailor into the dust. The crowd erupted in laughter. The once proud deceiver was now a laughingstock. Pride and fear make people blind to the truth. Deception may bring temporary success, but the truth will always prevail. Those who build their power on lies will eventually fall. A verse from Rumi that fits this story perfectly. "He who wears the robe of lies will be stripped bare before all eyes."